PixMix is brought to you by the Arun Meta Show, broadcasting on Liberated Syndication on youtube.com/Arun Meta Show, and is in association with the Old School Lane podcast.
PixMix is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with the Arun Meta Show.
Welcome to PixMix with Arun.
And Patricia.
Hey Patricia, how are you doing?
I'm really excited for this episode of PixMix, for sure.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the good ones, and so for those of you who do not know, I mean, I know we've probably been saying this, countless times, but there's going to be no, particular schedule now for PixMix. I think it's just going to be when we can do it,
exactly. We have 3 months to go, and we have 9 more movies to cover, so we got plenty of time.
Yeah, so, the PixMix has basically just become as random as the show itself, so you'll just see it, so,
exactly.
And also on top of that as well, it'll encourage you to actually press the bell on the notification for both us here at for Patricia at the Old School Lane and for me on the Arun Meta Show. So, if you're really desperate for PixMix, click the bell and get notified when a PixMix episode comes up, because it could appear any time at any moment. So, I can't think of any sea-related jokes to our Pix.
I think you just did it right now. I can't wait to see what today's episode of PixMix is going to be about. What are we waiting for?
Here we go. This one is one that really catches you by surprise because, when you see something like this, and I'm trying to think, was Shark Tale first before this? I'm just trying to think.
No, this came out after Shark Tale.
Oh, okay.
Shark Tale was cashing in on the popularity of Finding Nemo. When Finding Nemo came out, it was like the biggest hit. You have to understand about how huge Finding Nemo was. For the longest time, The Lion King was the highest grossing animated film of all time. And it wasn't until Finding Nemo that it took its place. And I think nowadays Frozen took its Finding Nemo's place. But yeah, for the longest time, this movie was huge.
Yeah, I think you can tell from this. I think Patricia's the one who's very enthusiastic for Finding Nemo.
No, I seriously am, because I actually have a story relating to this. So when I was in high school, I used to work in a science museum, and we had a lot of things in this museum. We had a dinosaur exhibit, we had an Egyptian exhibit, we had a science exhibit where they had like a whole bunch of like Tesla coils and a whole bunch of things. And one of the sections that we had was an aquarium session. And we had like a whole bunch of fish from a whole bunch of countries. And I wasn't like part of that, but around after work we used to clean up the area. Like we would like wipe down the tanks and like sweep the floors, and during the time in which I would be cleaning or supervising all of the people, to make sure that they follow the rules on the aquarium session, because you're not allowed to tap on the glass. I can assure you that at least 3 or 4 times a day, like for the longest time that I worked there, I worked there for about a year, every single kid said, "Look, mommy, there's Nemo," because we had clownfish in our exhibit, and we had a blue dorsal fin fish, which was Dory, and we had a puffer fish, and a lot of the fish that we had were from Finding Nemo, and all of the kids were surrounding it. So every time I think of this movie, I think about my time in high school when I worked at the Science Museum, and all the little kids will be so happy and excited saying, "Look, mommy, that's Nemo. Look, mommy, that's Nemo. Look, there's Dory." So yeah, I have a close attachment to this movie.
You had the greatest attraction ever.
I know it was
Seriously?
so great.
Wow.
And then when then when I first saw the movie, my family and I couldn't get enough of it. It was fantastic, I have to say. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I like I said, I have a personal connection with Finding Nemo.
Yeah, I have some pretty random trivia actually for this. Finding Nemo. Not only was there a movie, there was also a musical as well, which was a half-hour live show called Finding Nemo the Musical. And do you know? And this was directed by Robert Lopez. And do you know what he also did?
Ah, he did Avenue Q, and then eventually, after Avenue Q, he went on to work on Winnie the Pooh, and then after Winnie the Pooh, he went on to do Frozen.
The internet is for porn. The internet is for porn.
The
The
internet is for
same
porn.
guy.
Oh!
The same guy who did that did Finding Nemo the musical. Oh, that's so amazing. But anyway, before we even actually get into the fish the fish dish of Finding Nemo, there was the short to contend with, and this actually was interesting because if you went for the original theatrical release, you got an edited version of Knick Knack, which was one of their original shorts that had, I think it was the snowman with the
Yeah, it was the snowman.
trying to get towards the
It was
the
the
mermaid.
snowman, and he was trying to get towards the lady who was inside of this like in a beach, and he was trying to get closer to her. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one.
Oh my god, that. Yeah, these. Yeah. Hey, oh, you can blame her, could you? That's I think I was a snowman trapped in a snow globe with a woman like that next to me. I think I'd probably be doing everything I can to get out. So. Yeah, I think
Sure.
very relatable shot. I think we could definitely say, but but here's the thing about that. Again, we have this confusion as we do with some of these Pixar films. Some people will actually have watched the 3D re-release, and you know what you got with 3D re-release? You got either Toy Story Toons short, Partysaurus Rex. So that was interesting. So, Partysaurus Rex, for those of you who do not know, was a third episode in the Toy Story Toons series. It featured Rex, who disrupts the other toys, blowing soap bubbles, worried that they may ruin Bonnie's house, and he's chastised by the other toys, with Mr. Potato calling Party Pooper Rex. So basically, it's basically just a show out of the Toy Story Toon series that's been basically put onto the big screen before Finding Nemo makes its.
Nice.
So yeah, so either you got. So if you had the original theater, it was Knick Knack, and if you got the re-release, it was basically Toy Story Tunes. So.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay.
So cool.
So let's get into it. So the story wraps around our clownfish couple Marlin and Coral, who are about to be parents to 400 unborn children. However, a marauding barracuda attacks their home, and Marlin survives, but the barracuda eats Coral and 399 of her eggs, and he's managed to only save one egg, who he calls Nemo. And here's the thing about this, though. There's actually an interest. I don't know. Have you heard the theory that there might be a possibility that Coral survived the attack?
If she survived the attack, then why would she abandon Marlin and her family?
Maybe she probably maybe the same way that Andrew, we're going to talk about finding Dory at some point in the line, but maybe it might be that deal. Maybe she lost her memory, didn't know where she was after what happened. So
Possibly.
Yeah. But anyway, for this case, let's assume she's dead. So she is dead. So let's go with that. And so years later, Nemo, born with a deformed fin due to the damage of the egg took during the barracuda attack, begins his first day at school and is eager to get going. However, his unprotected father, Marlin, is nervous about letting his son go to school. So it's your classic, Marlin's had this really horrific event happen in his life, and now because of that, he's kind of just he has become quite overprotective of Nemo and kind of overprotective of himself in a way, because you can notice that his personality is so cocooned in this clownfish, and you remember when he's trying to tell the joke in that film, and you can just see that he's struggling to get it out because he's just so condensed in himself. So it's
you can't really blame him, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you can't know
I
because
mean,
something.
you have to think about the ocean. The ocean is a very dangerous place. Like there's predators, there's humans, there's global warming, there's stuff that falls into the ocean and you might think it's food and it you might eat it. So,
Jabba
yeah,
Jaw.
we have to not underestimate on that. I mean, it's not like Chucky Finster from Rugrats in which he's afraid of everything, even the guy in the oatmeal box. It's like, he's a child and he has fears, but at least with Marlin, these are more relatable fears. It's like he just saw his wife and almost every single child die in front, by a barracuda.
Hmm.
And like I said, I don't blame him for acting out this way.
Totally not. It's like I don't know. Would you say it's P? Would you call it PTSD at this point? I mean, it's like
I mean, if it was post-traumatic stress disorder, I mean, wouldn't he have like flashbacks of it? I mean, he never mentions about Coral or or the other babies, with the exception of like towards the end. But other than that, I mean, I guess you could
yeah.
argue that, but I would just say it's like like maybe like stress or like a severe panic mode.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, with him being afraid of losing the only child that he had from his wife, whom he clearly loved, I can understand why he's so overprotective of him.
Hmm. So after Marlin sends Nemo off to class with his teacher, Mr. Ray, the Stingray, he goes on to check on Nemo and catches him in almost swim out into open water. The two of them argue in front of Nemo's classmates, and Nemo, angry with his father, swims away into open water. Once then, he is captured by a diver who immediately leaves on a speedboat. So, I mean, I tell you what, a lot happens in very short period of time because you have the event
Yeah,
that
yeah, exactly. I
sets
was
up.
just about to say that. It's like, unlike some of the Pixar movies we were discussing about, in which like it takes a long time to get started, or like the first couple of minutes are like the best things about it. It's like the movie starts off really, really quickly. Like in the first 5 to 10 minutes, we get introduced to Marlin and Nemo. We get introduced to the ocean that they're living in. We already get introduced to Nemo's classmates and what they perceive as a human object, calling a boat a butt. And we see that Nemo is being taken over by the diver, and Marlin is trying to call for help, and nobody helps him. And we already have our conflict like really quickly, and now it's just building up into the search, the adventure of the main goal, which is to find Nemo.
I tell you
Which
what,
obviously that is the title.
you remember in the theater, I don't know if this happens in America. You get the little advert that basically tells you to go back to the lobby to go get some snacks. It's like
Yeah.
like I say, if you did that and you came back and like you pretty much missed like the beginning of Finding Nemo, I feel very sorry for you because a lot has just happened and you were too busy getting popcorn and Coke. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for some people, it might be thinking, oh, it's just the first couple of minutes. I'm sure that I can catch up, but it's like, no, you can't.
You
I mean, a
cannot.
lot of like the main conflict happens within the first 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, yeah, I do agree with you, Patricia. The ocean is a very dangerous place. I mean, like, there's Jabba Jaw and Aquaman and, like,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Woo! Knock, knock, knock.
I get no respect.
I got no respect. Oh my god, we just dated ourselves.
Yeah, we
Any
did,
young
yeah.
kids who even know who Jabberjaw is, then oh my god.
Think Scooby-Doo, except more wet. So,
Well, at least it's a lot better than what was it, Speed Buggy? I never liked Speed Buggy as a
there was,
kid.
oh my god, they jumped in that era. They jumped on everything. There was the Funky Phantom. There was what was his name? That ghost dog, Goober, I think he was called. And,
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
Goober. There was Josie and the Pussycats.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and there was Josie and the Pussycats in space. It's like and
Oh
no that
yeah, oh yeah, and Gilligan's Island in space, and the Happy Days in space. Oh my god!
and
But yeah,
yeah. But anyway, moving way away from Pixar at the
yeah, yeah,
moment.
we're sorry,
Now,
everybody.
now
But
we're
yeah,
really
the ocean is a very dangerous place,
yeah,
and
we're really
Marlin is like searching around, trying to call for help, and in comes Dory, and he's asking for help, and he's wondering if she's seen the boat, and she was like, "Yeah, I've seen the boat," and then they start swimming, and then Dory is like reacting to Marlin like she's never seen him before, like he's being a stalker, but in reality, she has short-term memory loss, and now Marlin is stuck in a predicament when the three sharks come in and introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'd say Ellen DeGeneres knocks this out of the park.
Oh, I love it so much. Seriously, I've always been a huge Ellen fan. I mean, even, like this was like when she was doing her stand-up routines in the 90s. And it's kind of like funny looking back on those stand-ups now when she's talking about her experiences of being a lesbian, about how she was fired or the show was canceled that she was in because she admitted of what that she was a lesbian, and looking at the crowd, like pretty much the only people who showed up in her shows were lesbians. It's like, I mean, who would have thought that nowadays she has essentially become our generation's Oprah?
Yeah, she's, and probably the person they're going to talk up to be president of the United States, only for her to basically say she doesn't have the DNA for it. So.
Well, I'm talking about talk show host Oprah, not, who she is in general. But no, I mean, it's actually funny because there was even an episode of Epic Rap Battles of History that paired up Ellen DeGeneres with Oprah Winfrey, and that's always actually a really fun one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Ellen DeGeneres. I mean, similar to how Tom Hanks plays Woody. I mean, it was amazing. She is so funny in this movie. Like for the longest time, she was like my favorite part in the whole movie because she was just so hysterical. Every single line that she says is so funny. I love her personality. It's amazing.
Yeah, I like it when she kind of goes a bit Deadpool with it as well, because with the same way Ryan Reynolds kind of like goes out of it with as well, because didn't she have, what's her name, who plays Princess Anna in Frozen, and they had that exchange.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was, she knows Dory very well, and I
remember, like, this was like years before Finding Dory came out, that she was she was like petitioning to Disney and Pixar saying, we need to have a Finding Nemo 2. Almost every single time there would be a new Pixar movie coming out, she would always say, we need a new Finding Nemo 2 so we can have Dory come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing as well, is like they should have listened to her, because yeah. And and Finding Dory was a success.
Like we were talking about with like prequels when we were discussing about Up. There's a reason why, some movies deserve to have continuations or backstories. And I'm glad that we were able to finally get Finding Dory. And we'll definitely talk about that sometime in this podcast. But yes, I'm really glad that we were able to get a story based off of Dory because she's such a great character.
Yeah, it's just, just to finish up on this as well, like, they had a sequel for Finding Nemo, they had a sequel for The Incredibles, they had a sequel for Ratatouille, they had a sequel for Up, a prequel for Up. It's like, literally, water everywhere and not a drop to drink. It's like, that all this they could work with, and like none of them decided to drink it. It's like,
they focus on cars.
The toys. Okay, so going back to Finding Nemo, when I get the words out. So they meet up with these sharks, and it's quite hilarious how they bring it in, because like we think they're going to be like, I don't know, the antagonists in this film, when they've been in the posters, they've been in the trailers, they've been in it, like they've been promoted to us, and then we find out they're vegetarians.
Yeah, they're vegetarian sharks, and they have like this kind of like an AA meeting, place that they meet up in a bunch of sinking ships where there's a lot of underwater mines, and they have like this discussion about how they didn't eat fish for 3 weeks and invite a fish friend to come along and discuss about the journey that you're taking to become vegetarians. And it's just, and the fact that they're Australian is hilarious too, because the movie does take place in Australia, which is actually great because you don't know a lot of Disney movies that takes place in Australia.
Mm-hmm. And this is the thing as well. I mean, there's not really a kind of a relatable scene to this, really. I mean, the only thing I could think of. Do you remember that episode of Looney Tunes when Sylvester is going? He joins Birds Anonymous and vows never to eat Tweety again. Like,
yes.
That's the only other thing. That's the only other thing I can relate it to, really. So it was an original kind of joke to do in this Pixar film. So brilliant, kudos to them. So later on, while Marlin and Dory are sleeping, the sub that they're about to tumble down into. So I completely misread this line. Later on, while Marlin and Dory are sleeping, the sub they're on is about to tumble down into the depths, as well as the mask. The two fish follow down. The darkness overtakes them. Dory forgetfulness causes her to think Marlin is a conscience before they see the light. Before they see a light.
Yes.
But then,
Also, I mean, I cannot reminisce without discussing about when I first saw that scene, which they were trying to escape, and they were looking around to find the door. And then when Dory reads through it, and then she says "escape." When I first saw that, I just cracked up. I remember everybody who saw the movie was like bursting up laughing at that scene. And then it's discovered that Dory can read, and so they need to use the mask so they can be able to find where Nemo's been taken. And then we get to that scene in which they're in the dark light, and we have that hilarious scene with Dory thinking that Marlin is her conscience. It's like Pinocchio. It's like, are you my conscience?
great reference there, by the way. So the
thank you.
Pinocchio, yeah. While they were there on the mission to find Nemo, Marlin and Dory stopped to have a small talk. Marlin explains that to her that he couldn't take it from here by himself. He thinks Dory is also so annoying that she kept talking to herself and saying, P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Face Sydney over and over again. When Marlin says he doesn't want Dory to be with him, Dory starts crying and saying Marlin doesn't like her. Marlin says that he does, but to make things worse, he says it's complicated. He says it's a complicated emotion. So that was quite.
And one of the fishes is voiced by John Ratzenberger.
Mm-hmm. A school of fish tells Marlin and Dory that to take the eastern Australian current to Sydney and advises Dory not to go through the trench, but she forgets. Marlin, the paranoia of the trench, has him swim above it, only to find a school of jellyfish. Luckily, the tops of the jellyfish don't sting, but they treat it like it's a game. But Dory fails to get out, so having been stung repeatedly, Marlin manages to get her out before passing out.
Let me ask you something, Aaron. Have you ever been stung by a jellyfish?
I've known people who have been stung by jellyfish, and I tell you, it involves a lot of vinegar. I think last time I remember.
Yes, I have been stung by jellyfish because when it's the warmer months in Florida, the jellyfish do like to come around into our waters, and they swim there. And I just let you know, it hurts. It stings, it itches, and you need to bathe in vinegar so you can be able to get rid of it. It is not pleasant.
Yeah, I remember the last time I think we dealt with jellyfish, we kind of just scooped them up, and moved them away, which I don't know, it was just kind of thing to do at the time.
And being around their eggs is not a lot of fun either.
No, it's not. After getting to the destination, they accidentally get swallowed by a whale who was chasing krill. When Marlin fails to break out once again, Dory swims down to him and says that the same 8 words she said when they first met Marlin. They're all right. It's going to be okay. While refusing that rudely but sadly, Marlin tells his promise to Nemo on Dory. She explains that Marlin can never let that happen to Nemo, and so we get to the point where Dory says she can speak whale, and then we get that hilarious thing where Marlin just thinks he's just defending him. So it's pretty good, and it goes back to that point where they have to
Not only that, but they also meet up with the group of turtles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I think it was Crush, who's voiced by Andrew Stanton, who worked on this movie.
Mm-hmm. And so Marlin and Dory are then swallowed by Gerald until Nigel makes Gerald cough him up. The two fish meet Nigel, who agrees to take them to the dentist's office. And, we actually missed the dentist scenes, and surprisingly not in my notes.
Yeah, usually with the dentist scenes, we're just focusing on the fishes in the tank. And you have a whole bunch of characters. You have Deb and Flo, who's actually, they claim to be sisters, but the sister is actually a reflection. You have the starfish, you have the pufferfish, you have the fish who's constantly wanting everything to stay clean. You have the cleaning shrimp, and you have, of course, Gil, who's like the main, kind of like the unofficial leader of the group. Mm-hmm. And, he's he's like this tough fish who wants nothing more than to escape. And he's tried multiple times to escape, but it's never worked. And he kind of uses Nemo as part of his plan, so he can be able to like sneak on towards where the tank fan is to throw some pebbles on it so it can stop. And then the tank will get filthy, and then the dentist will have to clean it up, put them into bags, and then they can just roll away into the ocean, which I think that's actually a brilliant idea. I mean, it's a little bit far-fetched and crazy, but it's just genius enough that it would work.
Yeah, you know what? I tell you, in that there's the whole threat of the little girl. I completely forget the name of. It's like.
Oh yeah, Darla.
Darla, yeah, it's it's like she becomes. I mean, finally she doesn't have like much of a. She doesn't have any speaking role in this at all.
I mean, she has a few lines, but she's not really much of a main character. She's more like an obstacle that the fish have to overtake in order for Nemo not to be dead from constant shaking of the bag.
Yeah, but they kind of build her up, and in a way, she kind of becomes like the. I don't want to say she becomes the antagonist of the film, but she kind of throws you in that scenario of like she's the threat that they're all sort of afraid of. And so she's not she's not like a villain or anything like that, but I think she ends up kind of like being being put in that position. I think because they talk her up so much. I think in the film, so that's where they go with her, and I just think this film doesn't really have a villain when you really think about it. I mean, like if anything, the villain of this film is basically talking yourself down. If anything, so, but yeah, they get to the point where they get to the dentist's office, and Marlin, depressed, thinks that he's broke his promise, so determines to go home. Meanwhile, Dory becomes forgetful again until she meets Nemo. When she reads Sydney on the water tube, her entire memory suddenly returns and helps Nemo find Marlin by forcing a crab to tell where Marlin went. With this information, Marlin and Nemo are reunited, but moments after they find that Dory is caught in a fishing net, Nemo plans to save her, but Marlin is reluctant to let him go for fear he might lose him again. So in a way, they kind of like it kind of reminds you a bit of the Incredibles, where Mr. Incredible loses Elastigirl, and then it goes to the point where they have to fight the Omnidroid, and then Mr. Incredible says, "I can't lose you again." Like, not again. I'm not strong
exactly.
enough.
And this movie came out first. This came out in 2003, and The Incredibles I think came out like 1 or 2 years later.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about that. Yeah, this is the thing about PixMix. It's throwing me off a little bit on the timeline about what came out first now. So, yeah,
right.
We're in that.
But yeah, you do have a point. I mean, one of the things that I really do respect about Finding Nemo is that this movie definitely feels like not only is it for like little kids, but it's definitely a strong message for the parents, in which you have to understand that the world is a very dangerous and cruel place, especially nowadays. But you can't smother and overprotect your child, because then if they were to face real danger by themselves, they wouldn't know what to do. Like the beginning of the movie, we see Nemo, he's like completely scared and he's defenseless against, when he was almost about to be sucked into the fan, and when he was like trapped into the fish tank for the first time, he didn't know what to do. He was calling for his dad for help because that's all he was ever taught. That's all he ever knew, was to stay safe in the anemone. And then when he was put into Gil's teachings about trying to be strong and brave, that's when he changes. And for Marlin, he was always staying in that area of the sea, because I mean, once you see something that traumatic in which a barracuda came by and killed your wife and your family, and you have to protect what's left of your what you cherish, and if he didn't go anywhere else beyond that part of the ocean, then exploring thousands of miles elsewhere is very scary. And it's good for both of them, and it's a great lesson for both the kids and for the adults.
Mm-hmm. So
I think I even read somewhere that the Andrew Stanton, I think that he based the story off of his own experiences watching over his kid, and how he felt that he was becoming overprotective, and he wanted to essentially teach himself that lesson about a balance between, how much protection you should give to your child right before you should let them go on their own.
Yeah, well, some good came out of it. He translated it into this movie, so that's got to be a plus, if anything, for overprotectiveness. So,
mm-hmm.
So, Marlin realizes he has to let him go. Nemo's plans succeed, so we do get a bit of drama in it as well, because we think that, well, I mean, it's not really drama, really. We all knew he was going to make it out okay, and, then we get Just Keep Swimming from Dory.
Yeah, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Yeah.
So after the adventure, Marlin is now is nearly overprotective of his son, knowing that he can look after himself. Dory also spends a lot of time with the two, and she accompanies Marlin as he takes Nemo to school. As an epilogue, the fish in the dentist's fish tank are shown to succeed after they escape after sabotaging the filter. However, they are still in the plastic bags.
Yeah, and it's actually questioning on how are they going to get out, because they're fish. They don't have like sharp claws that they can just pop the balloons, and how are they going to get fed?
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that actually brings up a lot of questions.
That's a pretty dark ending when you think about it. It's like, are we gonna
Yeah, it is a dark ending because they're trapped in a plastic bag and they have nowhere else to go. They're essentially just floating there on the top of the ocean, and now they're just stuck.
Yeah, it feels like the Italian Job, where they steal all the gold and now they're like balancing off this, but then they balancing off this cliff, and the problem is that if all the guys get out of the bus, then the bus goes over the cliff with the gold. If they try to go to the gold, then they go over with the gold. So it's like there's sort of in that's a perilous situation of being in the plastic bag and not being able to do anything. So
but as we find out in the sequel, they're okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much was Finding Nemo, and it was I tell you what, it's pretty straightforward story. I mean, it's it's a story about Marlin becoming less overprotective of his son, and he goes on this massive adventure, and so if anything, like a lot happens in Marlin. A lot of events happen in Marlin's life. The fact that he lost so much at the beginning and then gained so much at the end. It's like it's just it's a very turbulent life that Marlin has led, pretty much only in the first movie, and we don't even got to Finding Dory yet. It's like
Finding Dory is when we'll definitely say a lot about Finding Dory when we reach to that point.
Mm-hmm. So we got to score this. So I think Patricia, I think you're going to give it a 10.
Yes, I am going to give it a 10 because, like I said, I really love this movie. I have a strong connection with it. It's great for kids. It's great for the adult. It has funny humor. It has really dark moments that are surprisingly scary for kids. And it has a lot of sad moments, too. I just find it to be amazing. So, yeah, I'm going to give it a 10.
Tell you what, I can't really find fault with it at the moment, so I guess I'll say 10. I think.
Sure.
Join along with with Patricia on this venture. So I'm really surprised how fast we got through that. Really, because I mean, like
I said before, it was a very simple story compared to the others, but the way that it was executed is phenomenal. So I'm sure that we'll spend more time talking about the others, or even less time talking about the others. Cars.
Yeah.
But.
Mm-hmm. So it was a massive success at the box office. For those of you who do not know, it made a staggering tell you what, the first release, the budget for this film was $94 million. The box office was $867 million.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it beat off The Lion King as the highest grossing movie of all time.
But here's something else.
Like I said before,
here's something else, Patricia. How much do you reckon the re-release did?
I don't know, 500.
$920 million.
Whoa, that's even more than was originally released. Holy crap!
Exactly. This film stands the test of time. And it was released in 2003, re-released in 2012, and wow.
And this was that around that was like around when Finding Dory was coming out, right? Because they did the same thing with Toy Story 3, in which they re-released Toy Story 1 and 2 in theaters.
Isn't this all I mean, dare I say, maybe we'll release it again in a decade later and see how much you make. Because it's like, pending that you
Yeah,
might have
that'll be amazing. It'll probably make $1 billion.
well, yeah, definitely if it has more circulation and, there's more of an appetite for the movie going public. So, I mean, dare I say about the, I want to talk this movie out a bit more, actually, to give it its due. So it was highly critically acclaimed, 99% on Rotten Tomatoes and 100% by top critics. Surprisingly enough, an average of 89% on Metacritic.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's
crazy considering how strict Metacritic is.
And Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars. What was he drinking at that time?
Well, sometimes Roger Ebert does do questionable reviews at some of his movies.
Yeah, it was. Some of his films, when he decimates them, it's totally understandable. But
Sure. And I think there was even an interview with Nathan Lane who talked about that this was his favorite animated movie of all time.
Mm-hmm. Finding Nemo was the first Pixar feature-length film to receive an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature Film. So
wow, and they would pretty much like if it's not Disney, and then it would be Pixar, and they would be doing this for like the next decade.
Mm-hmm. And
so I would, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, for like as of the making of this podcast, the Oscars is tomorrow, so I wouldn't be surprised if Coco wins for Best Animated Feature.
Mm-hmm. It was nominated for 3 additional Academy Awards: original screenplay, achievements in music, and also achievements in sound editing. So there was plenty of awards going around for that.
I mean, I would say that the soundtrack is pretty decent. It does give that aquatic atmosphere, but. And the sound editing is also really good too when you have like the ocean and you have like the fish flow going through, and I would say that the sound editing is also really good in that. So yeah, I think that as we said before, Finding Nemo is an amazing movie that if you have not seen before, then what the hell are you waiting for? Go watch it.
Yeah. And also, just to let you guys know, Andrew Stanton has hinted that there might be another Finding Nemo sequel, so there might actually be a trilogy.
Oh, nice. Like Toy Story.
Yeah.
I wonder what that would be focused on. Like, the first one was about Marlin and Nemo. The second one was about Dory. So I wonder what the third one would be about.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting indeed. So,
maybe it'll be about Nemo when he's older.
Maybe, sure. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up our review of Finding Nemo. Just before we go, we do have a sad announcement to make, and that is that Pixar animator Bud Luckley died a couple of days ago. He was aged 83 years old. Pixar animator Bud Luckley, the man who is widely credited for bringing Toy Story's Woody the Cowboy to life, died at the age of 83. In a statement offered to the Hollywood Reporter, Luckley's family confirmed that he had died in hospice facility on Saturday after a lengthy illness. So our condolences to the Luckley family and everyone at Pixar Animated Studios for this unfortunate passing away. So
no, that's really, really sad.
Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, we do leave on a sad note, but we also leave on a positive note as well with Finding Nemo being such an incredible film. And so, thank you very much for checking out this week's PixMix. We'll let you know, if you hit the bell icon on our YouTube channels, you'll be notified when the next PixMix comes out. So, from me, Aaron.
And Patricia.
Take care, and bye-bye for now.
Okay, just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
Swimming.